So I wanted to do another video talking about AIA. So um, it's already going out because if I say what I was going to say, it'll probably be like, oh my god. Okay, so um, there is a reason real grace preachers weren't supposed to go past like even the spirit of Paul over something, and that there's two people that pretty much lost a son. Okay? Athalia lost her son, and this was over false seers that and her husband wouldn't let go of them. Number two, it could be that could be where the extension of Herod actually came from. Okay? Was from the Ahab side, the blood that spilt all over, where prostitutes just came out of nowhere and started bathing in their blood from an Asherah pole that was set up. Makah is very it's even close to Makkah, which is just one IA, and that's where the selling of skins was. So as soon as he disposed of his grandmother for making a really obscene one, somebody came down to want to make a deal with him, because it's a common thing that took place in the world. And you'll have situations where people call people sons and they're not really sons, or their dad isn't really their dad, but it's like they forget that they have their own children somewhere, literally. So, and it actually turns into a type of thing that starts color coding itself and gets really racist, and but at the same time it's supposed to look not racist, and become what turns into an AIDS situation. And but it's all from a bad point of view, a bad seeing thing, that something's like off generation wise. So it'll keep heading down a certain way always. It doesn't change in its pattern. And if you get rebuked for it, actually people can just be normal. And the only people that bring it up are already people that probably bathed in that sort of blood, if you want to call it. The other thing I wanted to bring up is a way of it not being so difficult to see is if you look up at the night sky, where I described the stars and how they set, like the 3-1, and that one's kind of like the hourglass. The bank is HSBC down there, by the way. And above that is the one that's got the house like this, but it's kind of like a short, it's like a coffin. And this is where the kid thing came in. So this is why sometimes I'm precarious about voting or putting money into some of these things, especially when I sense that a lot of things just all of a sudden went almost like, underwater fish tank volcano. I was just like, I don't know if I should do that, because like that's what it's actually a house with the curved in walls. It's a whatever, the 5-1, not octagon, not pentagram. It's a pentagram. And this is why Paul said don't go past it, because they knew something was going on again. It's sort of like the Athalia story, repeating itself in Herod form all the way through, from the hourglass underneath to the pentagram to the 6-pointed one. So sometimes when you look up the sky and you see the 6-pointed one on top, the 6-pointed star, or 6 stars that kind of form a hexagram, you'll notice one that's like definitely out of place, and that one's shape-shifting. The other one usually across from it would be like, oh shit, and move really far away. Okay, so there's usually like you'll see two constant shape-shifting plasma, if you want to call it, thing come about. And the next thing I don't want to say is that there's three parts, of course, people were obsessed with. At first, they were obsessed with white blood cells, and that cured infections. Two, they were obsessed with then the red blood cells, and then that carried the DNA. And then they realized they were screwing up that, and now they're on to plasma. And plasma has a way of kind of presenting things in a very bright manner that's almost true, but it's like also not. Okay? It's also not true. The fourth one, I won't get into that because that is deadly, that is destructive, that is, if it gets hit really, really too much, it will definitely cause death. Like rain down from hell, death. Because that's what they were, people did those things and it was wrong. So there was two people that lost their son, Ben Benaiah, okay, Benaiah, lost his son in Ezekiel 11, and his name is like the grain, like the words that represent grain, and he married two, okay, and Athalia also lost a son. So consider it this way: if they keep doing what they're doing, it shapeshifts because they're lying. There's no cheating hearts or anything like that. If they keep doing it again, they'll get a Jezebel spirit regardless of how Catholic you are, and you will end up worshiping it. Regardless of how other religion you are, you'll end up in the same spot because you're pretty much saying Jesus is not risen already, and you're trying to create murder on that by bringing him to the supposed base when Jesus has already arrived in the flesh and caused murder. That's also a sign that they'll act like the Virgin Mary, and I have the Catholic Bible. It says Assumption of Virgin Mary in 3 lions. But the point is that it was like a miraculous birth, miraculous conception, the whole 9 months type thing. And then it has to be that basically that shows that I'm not God, you're not God, and neither is our offspring God, but there is a special thing that Jesus already risen that represents so that things can be forgiven. If they don't hold to it, they only use Solomon, and then it'll just keep shape-shifting. And if they send their wives with Abdon because they're waiting on the Benaiah one to get the grain, because Israel actually in that whole area probably would be filled with grain. Filled because grain feeds your cattle, your meats, your natural meats, and then easy to grow vegetable gardens, type thing. So that whole Cain and Abel story, when they start doing it again, they must have had somebody doing it again, where the actual Herod and his wife situation really was getting to the point, and for some reason even Herod liked the repentance of sin side, but it still went to where they think that Athalia and Jezebel were like a mother and daughter situation, and I'll let you crash that out with some probably Masonic people, because it's not. That's how far the AIDS story carried over. The actual real AIDS story. And God did this for a reason. And he probably picked, the one that was probably at the top of his game on the astral poles to make a deal with Azza. And he took the deal, and the seer told him, that that's probably not your great 7th generation great, but it also shows a seed of bitterness that carries over. And that when there is a seed of bitterness, there is like no forgiveness. Like they keep pushing the same mentality. They keep doing the same thing. And like I said, if you don't believe me, think about how the Jeffrey Dahmer story carried over into Jeffrey type stories, that just even the name itself carries over this sort of like evil type thing. You know what I mean? So that's something to think about. And the other thing to think about is that they keep trying to change Aaron to think of heaven as a favorite pastime. So I'm thinking, like, how many fallen people do you have on Mount Hor, supposedly? Because if you think about it, it's not people really in general. We're talking about principalities, because only certain people who would actually really know heaven, especially use the priest Aaron about it, would think of heaven as a pastime. So that's probably not a good thing either. So, okay, that, and is there anything else that is kind of like, I don't know. Some of the things that you see, like I see Trump sometimes like in a different form, but he's not really shapeshifted. I think these, what do you call them, rallies were pre-recorded or something, or I don't know, because every time I see them use him to speak in regards to something, I hear almost the exact same words, and I always see him actually, I had an orange tan too, by the way, once. Orange with just like kind of like his eyes are really, really white around his, he's whiter around his eyes, and his skin is like oranger. And that's when I really like, I think I'm looking at a real video of him. And that's why I kind of was like, is he kidnapped? Is he, I don't get why people are so chaotic. Just one thing to speak about border chaos. There's another thing to speak about, like, are you sure? Because, man, he's saying a lot of the same things, dude. He really is. And maybe that's just a cover up for them to get away, to talk about other problems arising. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so God bless. Don't do the 7 one. I always drop to 6 and get rage anyways, because it's like, duh, Okay. Oh, and I wanted to bless people that I work with. It's called Iceless Ice. It's because they do keep rolling things in the church at Thyatira. The disappearing ice, what do you call it? The triangle, the perfect isosceles triangle. There you go. That disappears. There's another one that points east that's always appearing, right? So they have not an anvil. So I threw away the Kingdom of Heaven video, especially after somebody with leprosy already got healed. I threw it away. It's not an anvil, but like if you put them together, it's like a shooting silver star. And so the ones that are the 3 always disappear while they check on things, and the other ones work with you to get through it. God bless.